I'm still looking at the print dialog box. I'm working in the final panel, which is called Summary, and it goes ahead and summarizes all the settings that I've established in the other panels of the dialog box. It also unloads a few warnings on me. And in this exercise, I'm going to explain what those warnings mean. I'll also show you how to adjust the document raster effects resolution, which is another group of options that affects how your artwork will print. All right, our first warning is that the document contains artwork that requires flattening. What that means in English is that there's transparency at work inside of the document. There might also be some dynamic effects, that kind of thing, and there sure as heck are. We've got all kinds of variations in opacity, so lots of translucent objects here. We've got a bunch of dynamic effects at work. We've got some drop shadows behind the skateboard and the surfboard. We've got blend modes as well going on with the framing elements. And all that means is that we are taking full advantage of all the wonderful options that Illustrator has to offer. And I'll be explaining those options in all kinds of detail in the advanced portion of this series. As I say, that's where things really heat up. But this is just Illustrator's way of kind of throwing up his hands and absolving responsibility. Just saying, you know, something could go wrong, even though it's very unlikely it will. So I almost never have problems with transparency. As I alluded to in an earlier exercise, when I run into problems, it tends to be gradients, and there's no gradient warning here, even though I do have gradients at work inside the document. The next warning says the document contains overprinting. Why is that a problem, Illustrator? I don't know. Maybe it's telling me because, after all, overprinting doesn't work with your LaserJet 2700 because you're not printing CMYK composite, so I don't know what you're doing, but it's not going to hurt anything. And then the document contains RGB images. That's not a problem at all. Now, people get pretty worked up over that one. A lot of folks assume if you're printing CMYK artwork, all your Photoshop imagery needs to be converted to CMYK in advance. Actually, Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign and all these various Adobe applications use exactly the same color engine. So whether you convert an RGB image to CMYK in Photoshop or you let Illustrator do it on the fly during the printing process, the result is going to be the same. And I have a lot of experience with this. What we end up doing for my one-on-one books is most of those images are placed into InDesign as RGB images, and I leave InDesign in charge of the RGB to CMYK color conversion. And everything goes great. All right, so those are the warnings that we're seeing there. There's one other warning that you might see. Illustrator might grouse at you that your document raster effects resolution is set too low. So you might see that it's 72 ppi or lower, especially if you had set this document up as a web graphic in the first place. You'll definitely see that warning. You'll also see that information here in the graphics panel. Remember that we're told the document raster effects resolution is 300 ppi. But what's remarkable about all this information here is that we don't get a chance to change it, even though it is a printing setting. Fundamentally, this is a printer option here. It's not located anywhere in the print dialog box. Instead, you have to go to the effect menu and choose this command. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Done in order to leave the print dialog box because apparently I need to take a detour here to this other command. I'll go up to the effect menu and I'll choose Document Raster Effects Settings. And notice we start things off with a color model. And so the question is, think drop shadow, for example. Do you want to render your drop shadows, which are blurry and therefore they need to be converted to pixels? Are you going to convert them to CMYK images or grayscale, which would work fine, by the way, if all of your drop shadows are black? However, if they have any color associated with them, then you need to switch back to CMYK. But setting things to grayscale could theoretically increase the speed of your print job. Bitmap, I wouldn't do that in a million years. It's going to be black and white, so you don't want that. Anyway, most likely you'd leave it set to CMYK. Here's the thing you might want to change is your resolution value. Right now it's cranked up to 300 ppi. Well, bear in mind, we just saw inside the print dialog box, if Illustrator has to convert out gradients or a gradient mesh or something along those lines to pixels, if it's forced to do so, if it has no other choice, we went ahead and established transparency flattener settings that said that a resolution of 200 pixels per inch was just fine. And yet our drop shadows are going to be 300 pixels per inch? That's insane. You don't need high resolution drop shadows like that. In fact, medium is perfect. 150 ppi is just great. If you want to match that resolution you specified in the flattener settings, then you could click Other and change that value to 200 ppi. So up to you. However, if you go down the screen, 72 ppi, That's pretty low. You're probably going to notice some jagged edges inside of your drop shadows, and the print dialog box is going to get very mad at you. Otherwise, these other options are just fine as is. Go ahead and click OK, and you're good to go. And of course, because we have made changes both inside the print dialog box and inside that document raster effects settings dialog box, you do have some unsaved changes, as indicated by the asterisk in the title tab, and you would want to go ahead and save your changes. And that, my friends, is what you need to know about printing from Illustrator CS5.